Good to have you with us. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Thanks for starting your morning with us. We're going to begin today in Washington with President Trump calling on the Supreme Court to save his sweeping tariffs. So the president filed an appeal late last night asking the justices to quickly reverse a lower court ruling that found they were illegal. His Solicitor General pressed the high court to hear arguments as soon as early November, writing the stakes in this case could not be higher.
From the Trump administration's economic policy to its controversial health policy, today HHS Secretary RFK Jr. is heading to Capitol Hill. Now, this was initially supposed to be a hearing on next year's health care agenda, but after the sudden firing of Director Susan Minares, some senators are gearing up to grill the health secretary over the recent chaos at the CDC, and that includes some Republicans.
I told him, I said, your job number one is to restore the confidence of the American people in the institution of public health in America. So far, he hasn't done that. All I see is chaos.
This as Florida became the first state to announce plans to end all vaccine mandates yesterday, including for kids in schools. As you can imagine, that is getting a strong reaction from the medical community. We will chat with NBC News medical analyst Dr. Vin Gupta about what the experts say about vaccines as we head into the fall. First, though, let's go to our senior White House correspondent, Gabe Gutierrez, for more on the politics of all this. Gabe, good morning. Let's start with this legal fight over the president's tariffs. They are still in effect despite these now 2 losses in court for the Trump administration after small businesses sued. The administration wants the Supreme Court to try and intervene pretty quickly here. What's the argument?
Joe and Savannah, good morning. As you mentioned, the Federal Appeals Court has left these tariffs in place until at least mid-October while this appeals process plays out. And you're right, this is just a huge policy shift for the administration, a policy critical to what the president's been doing over the last several months. And what the administration is arguing now in this appeal is that, yes, they believe that the president does have the authority and did not overstep his authority by imposing these tariffs, but they're asking the court to expedite its review of this because it is potentially stalling sensitive diplomatic negotiations, and that's why this has to be done more quickly than a typical case, according to the administration. Now, it is possible that oral arguments might not start here until early November. Still a lot of questions about how this plays out, whether these tariffs, which are now set to remain in place until mid-October, what happens then. But either way, the administration, in filing this appeal, not only filing an appeal, but filing a motion to expedite, meaning they want the answer to this very quickly. Joe and Savannah.
Gabe, I want to ask you about a different court battle, something we just mentioned. It looks like the president appears to have lost, at least for now, on this one. This is this Harvard funding situation. A federal judge in Boston ordered the Trump administration to unfreeze the billions of dollars there in research funding that was supposed to be earmarked for that university. The White House had frozen that money. Our viewers might remember they had said that the university's failure to deal with anti-Semitism on campus was the reason. The judge didn't appear to see a connection between the two. She actually wrote in her order that the government used anti-Semitism as a smokescreen for a targeted, ideologically motivated assault on this country's premier universities. Gabe, is this the end, then, of the funding fight for Harvard? What happens next?
Not quite, Savannah. Look, the judge did acknowledge that there was at least some anti-Semitism on campus at Harvard, but then said that that really had nothing to do with pulling federal funding, that one didn't have anything to do with the other. So, yes, the judge reinstating those $2.2 billion in funding for Harvard, but it's unclear whether Harvard will get that immediately. Again, the administration plans to appeal this case and continues to make the argument that this judge, in their view, is appointed by President Obama and is an activist judge. They're trying to make that argument. And this is something that we've seen time and time again from the administration, this battle between the executive branch and the judicial branch. So this fight, no, it's far from over.
And Gabe, before we let you go, let's talk about the legislative branch and RFK Jr. He goes before the Senate Finance Committee today against this backdrop of the recent chaos at the CDC, much of it centering on vaccine policy, which we'll dive into more in a moment. What can we expect today?
Yeah, certainly. And it's not just the chaos at the CDC. You mentioned this, that yesterday the state of Florida moving to ban all vaccines in that state. And so this upheaval in the public health community really across the country. Now this hearing, we expect a very contentious hearing where lawmakers are expected to grill Robert F. Kennedy Jr. over his stances on vaccines and his firing of the CDC director, which has also prompted several other top officials at the CDC to resign. And so, yes, we expect a grilling on Capitol Hill today.
All right. Gabe Gutierrez. Gabe, thank you so much.
Well, as RFK Jr. prepares to face those tough questions in Congress, health officials in Florida are announcing plans to end the state's vaccine mandates. Now, many in the medical community are warning it could have a dangerous impact on public health. NBC News correspondent Ann Thompson has a look at the motivation behind the move in the country's third most populous state and how some other states are now forming an alliance to spread the word about vaccine recommendations amid a lack of leadership at the CDC.
The battle lines over vaccines drawn along state borders. Florida now planning to eliminate all vaccine mandates, even for schools, although shots will still be available. State Surgeon General Joseph Ladapo.
Every last one of them is wrong and drips with disdain and slavery. Okay? Who am I as a government or anyone else, or who am I as a man standing here now to tell you what you should put in your body?
Among the vaccine mandates that could be erased, measles, chickenpox, polio, and hepatitis B. Medical experts are alarmed.
And we'll continue to accumulate more and more unvaccinated people living in Florida who are under age 5, who will over time become a walking time bomb in terms of a potential outbreak.
3 other states, California, Oregon, and Washington, are forming a health alliance to provide their own vaccine recommendations. Citing the recent firings of experts at the CDC, they say the agency has become a political tool that increasingly peddles ideology instead of science. The Department of Health and Human Services rejecting that claim, saying policy will be based on rigorous evidence. Now even Republicans on Capitol Hill doubt if HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. can rebuild trust.
There's just been too much chaos. It's a goat rodeo over there.
Ann Thompson, NBC News.
For more on this, let's bring in NBC News medical analyst Dr. Vin Gupta. Doctor, good morning. So first, if we could just kind of zoom out. I mean, vaccine, there's been so much conversation, right, about them, especially since COVID. But if we just think about, like, even the Hippocratic Oath, this code of ethics, standards, doctors swear to uphold, chief among them is first do no harm. Given what we know about the safety and effectiveness of vaccines, especially ones that kids have been getting just to go to school for decades, does this violate that in any way, would you say?
Good morning, Savannah. Yes, it does. Personally, I think this is scandalous so far as it pertains to public health, and it's sycophantic. I mean, this is not out of the norm for Ladapo, the Florida Surgeon General, to do things that have no grounding in evidence or in the principles of public health, but to further some other political aim. And just to say it to your listeners, Savannah and Joe, non-medical exemptions for vaccines exist in Florida. They exist in most places across the country. They've been increasing in Florida. So this is performative. This is not substantive.
Let's talk about Florida. It's a huge state. The latest census says, 21 million people live there, not to mention a massive tourist destination. So what might happen in Florida if people stop getting vaccinated against things that are highly contagious, potentially debilitating, like measles, polio? Is it possible we could see an impact in other states outside of Florida?
Absolutely. My hope here is in states that have at least 94% coverage, Joe, for childhood vaccines. That's the level that we feel we need to root out an outbreak. So-called herd immunity we talked so much about during COVID applies to measles, applies to polio. In places like Florida, though, they're flirting with a dangerous threshold there, where polio exemption rates are high enough in those places that herd immunity level is not getting reached, or we're right at the precipice. It's about 94% there. And so what does that mean? That means that in elementary schools across Florida, perhaps other parts of the country, I think they're the canary in the coal mine, they're going to see outbreaks of vaccine-preventable illnesses for children, polio, measles, of course, others potentially. And why does that matter? That doesn't just matter for unvaccinated kids, Joe. That matters for partially vaccinated kids, too. Those that are younger, still in their vaccine series, they could still be exposed. And so this impacts everybody, not just those that are unvaccinated.
What about the CDC, Doctor? How does that sort of what's going on there, this lack of steady leadership, the changes that we're seeing, ultimately impact public health guidance across the country and make it something people feel at home?
I mean, Savannah, we're seeing it play out here. I'm on the West Coast. Our 3 states here on the West Coast are banding together to counter the federal CDC lack of leadership. And they're probably going to embrace medical society guidelines, which are good, such as the American Academy of Pediatrics. But this is not the way things should be, Savannah and Joe. I mean, this is creating confusion. I'm getting a ton of questions. Doc, do I need a prescription? Doc, is my insurance going to cover my booster shot? This is not good for anybody. And I should say to the two of you, 80% of Americans, based on polling data, strong polling data, bipartisan support, 80% for vaccine requirements for children in schools. This is not controversial.
So as we head into the fall season, just what's the most important thing you want people to know about vaccines?
Nothing here is new, Joe. No other country in the world is having these types of conversations for a reason, because nothing has changed about the science. These are safe, these are effective. Resources are important. Healthychildren.org, produced by the American Academy of Pediatrics. It's a nonprofit. Great navigable information, Joe. Encourage everybody to go there, and immunize.org for adults if you have questions about adult vaccines.
All right, Dr. Van Gupta, great to see you as always. Thank you.
On Capitol Hill, both Democrats and some Trump allies are joining forces pushing to release the Epstein files. Victims of Jeffrey Epstein and his accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, told emotional stories of abuse in the shadow of the U.S. Capitol yesterday. Now those survivors say they will compile their own client list if Congress doesn't bring the files into the light. NBC News Now anchor Hallie Jackson has more.
A rally and a rallying cry.
We will never be silenced again.
On Capitol Hill, pressure building on GOP leadership to back the release of more Epstein documents in a rare alliance between MAGA allies and Trump foes.
What if this was your sister? What if this was your daughter?
Republican Thomas Massie and Democrat Ro Khanna leading the effort to get enough signatures to force a vote to compel the DOJ to release all files. 3 Republican women splitting with the rest of their party so far to back it. One leaving a meeting with survivors visibly emotional. Nancy Mace, who shared her own story of sexual assault, later saying she had a panic attack after listening to their stories. Despite the White House calling any support a very hostile act toward the administration, Khanna nodding to those Republicans backing.
They won't be part of a stunt or a hostile act. This is about standing with survivors.
If all Democrats sign on, as expected, only 2 more Republicans would be needed to force a vote. And as survivors called on members to do so, GOP lawmaker Victoria Spartz watched alongside us after, still undecided.
This is an issue that's important for a lot of American people, so I need to learn a little bit more.
President Trump trying to downplay the spotlight on it all.
This is a Democrat hoax that never ends. Thousands of pages of documents have been given, but it's really a Democrat hoax.
Mr. President Donald J. Trump, I am a registered Republican. There is no hoax. The abuse was real.
Survivors now pledging to compile their own so-called list of people they saw in Epstein's circles. As one told us,
we'll compile our own list and seek justice for, on our own. I mean, I think that's what's going to happen next.
House leaders and the White House say this particular congressional effort is basically redundant, pointing to a parallel push for documents by the Oversight Committee.
Allie, thank you.
More than 300 people have been evacuated because of a fast-moving wildfire in central California that continues to burn. It is part of several burning near Yosemite National Park that have already destroyed 13,000 acres. NBC News correspondent Liz Kreutz is on the ground in Chinese Camp, a historical California gold rush town, with more.
Central California, the center of multiple active wildfires. At one point, 22 burning all at once. So many that officials have dubbed it the TCU Lightning Complex and are using numbers to identify the individual fires instead of names. The mega blaze now scorching more than 13,000 acres with no containment.
The vegetation this time of year is pretty dry, right? It's just a very combustible environment.
The most destructive of the fires, the so-called 6.5 fire, which ignited late Tuesday near Yosemite National Park after a lightning storm and quickly spread through Tuolumne County, forcing evacuations as it tore through Chinese Camp, a small historical gold rush town that was settled around 1850 by Chinese miners.
It's gone. This is what you have. what's left.
Images showing the aftermath, a post office among several structures destroyed. The Beale family owns the Chinese Camp store and had to get out within minutes. While their home and business survived, they're worried about the recovery.
What is it like to see so much of the town destroyed?
I just feel so bad when I see on the news. I just really want to cry. It's all my fan.
The fire among dozens of blazes burning across the state amid dry, hot, and in some places stormy conditions that prompted 10,000 different lightning strikes Tuesday. In Los Angeles, firefighters rushing to stop a brush fire threatening homes in the Hollywood Hills, water drops helping to knock it down. Meanwhile, in Washington state, the rattlesnake fire burning over 4,000 acres. This, the stunning view from a U.S. Air Force plane dropping retardant over the flames as fire danger continues across the West.
Our thanks to Liz Kreutz for that report.
Let's get a check on what kind of conditions they can expect in California today. It's your Morning News Now weather with Angie Lassman.
She's also tracking the cold fronts and rain pushing eastward this week. A lot going on as always. Hey, Angie, good morning.
Guys, good morning to you. A lot going on indeed. We, of course, are going to be keeping a close eye on California. Still seeing some of those ingredients there for difficulty when it comes to firefighters battling those. And we've also got still some fire alerts that are up across parts of Washington. Notice Spokane, Mount Rainier. We've got these kind of red flag warnings that are going to stay in effect likely through the day today. So again, watching that region as well. We know that we've been dealing with warmer than normal conditions for a prolonged period. That heat wave, of course, doesn't help. And on top of it, we've got these isolated dry storms that are going to be likely across this region. And we know that lightning, always something that we watch for to kind of spark some of that. I mentioned the heat alerts, and you can see some of the overlapping areas. Again, Spokane down to Pendleton, really including much of the Pacific Northwest again today as our temperatures surge above 10 to 20 degrees above average for this time of year. Kind of more of the same of what we've been dealing with, which means the 90s are on tap yet again. Not quite as oppressive, but we're really only talking about a little bit of a break or improvement, I should say, in those temperatures across that region. So we're still going to hit the mid-90s in places across Washington state. Meanwhile, a cold front is ushering in some cooler air across the Midwest. So you've got just 62 for Minneapolis, and that kind of ends up leaving us with some cooler air in place for tomorrow as well. High 50s to mid 50s across parts of the upper Midwest. But notice the high 90s stick around in the Pacific Northwest. And really, that's what we're going to be talking about across that region, at least for the next couple of days. We will see mild conditions for the Northeast and the Great Lakes and the Midwest as we get into the weekend and beyond. The South, though, does remain quite warm with temperatures in the 90s and mid 80s. This morning, though, take your umbrella with you if you live across parts of the Northeast and New England and, of course, the Ohio Valley and the Great Lakes. That's where we have some rain, and it's going to be kind of a dual threat. We've got one cold front that's going to work through, bring us some general thunderstorms across the Northeast today. Then a secondary front that brings us more rain to the upper Midwest. And then, guys, we kind of have this rotating in of these showers and a couple of thunderstorms over some of those same regions in the next couple of days. The important thing, though, we do have a developing drought across that same region. So, again, much like what they're dealing with in the West, we need the rain. We'll take it. We could pick up maybe an inch or so by the time we get through the next couple of days.
All right. Thanks, Angie. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, if you were waking up hoping to retire today because you hit the Powerball, you're going to have to head off to work and wait at least a few more days. Not a single ticket, once again, was sold with the winning numbers of last night's draw. That jackpot, it would have paid out $1.4 billion. Billion with a B indeed, but that means the grand prize is projected to be at least $1.7 billion now. The estimated cash value it's worth is $770 million. That would be the third biggest grand prize in U.S. lottery history. So if you want to test your luck, you've got a couple days before the next draw. That is coming up this Saturday. Every time I keep saying I think it's time to get in it, and I keep forgetting to get a ticket. No.
I'm waiting till it gets to $1 trillion, then I'll buy a ticket. That's what I'm waiting.
It's got a high bar.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.